Hari Om. Today we will proceed with Bhagavad Geeta, chapter 13, verse 28. In these closing verses of the chapter 13, Lord Krishna, from verse 27 to verse number 30, is telling us the result, what happens to a person when he goes through the path of Jnana Yoga or self-knowledge. So this is the result that happens once a person is established in the knowledge of the self. We have covered verse 27 in the last session. We will proceed with verse number 28 today. So once we learn to claim our own real nature, once we understand that I am the very source of peace, security, and happiness, I do not have to seek for any permanent peace, security, and happiness from outside, from objects, from people, from situations. I have understood very clearly that every experience that comes from the external world is only temporary, and my happiness should not be dependent on that. When I discover that happiness from within, then I am totally free. Vedanta gives a very crude example to explain this. It gives the example of a dog which is biting on a bone. And as the dog bites on the bone cuts through the gums of the dog, and the gums start bleeding. So the dog is tasting the blood and wrongly thinks that the taste is coming from the bone and continues to chew more and more on the bone. And this, Vedanta says, is the sad but true state of the majority of human beings. Thus, the world is called Maya. It attracts us with color, beauty, smell, size, and we experience some happiness which we think is coming from external objects, when actually the source of the Anandam being experienced is actually coming from within. Logically speaking, objects are sentient. So they have objects have no life in them. So they are incapable of producing happiness. It is our false projection of Anandam upon the object which is the greatest error we all commit. Thus, by error, we conclude that the world is capable of giving me happiness, and we pursue the world to attain a state of fulfillment which we can never find in the world. So the Lord says here in verse 28, he says, Pashyan, the wise one. Pashyan means sees, but here again, not see with the physical eye, but it means who recognizes, who realizes through the power of discrimination. What does he see? So he sees Sarvatra, he sees Ishvaram. He sees this Supreme Lord, or this consciousness which is Sarvatra, everywhere. He recognizes the presence of consciousness in everything in creation. The same one consciousness is in animals, is in human beings, is in plants, it's in everything in this creation. And how does this vision of this consciousness appear? He says, Samavashtitam, it is uniform in all beings. So uniform means it is the same in equal measure in everything in creation. Whether the object is big or whether the object is small, the presence of the consciousness is of the same level in everything in creation. So he says here, it is samavashtitam, it is uniformly present, and it is samam, it is the same in everything. And here, so the person uses his jnana chakshu. At the end of chapter 13, the Lord will say that jnana chakshu, that chakshu is eye, jnana is wisdom. So here one sees because one is equipped with right knowledge. The right knowledge gives the person the right vision of divinity appearing everywhere in this creation. So the Lord says here, when a person has this vision of equalness of divine consciousness everywhere, then the Lord says in this verse, Na hinashati. This realized soul does not destroy the self. So the jnani does not disown, disclaim, or forget the Atma. So all other people, due to the ignorance of the self, they do not identify with the self, thus they identify with the non-self. The self is called Atma, the non-self is called Anatma. Anatma means the body, the mind, the intellect. So they wrongly identify with the Anatma, and as a result, they negate the existence of the Atma. They do not identify with that right existence. So, who has destroyed himself? Atmana, you yourself. By your own ignorance, by your wrong knowledge, you have caused your own spiritual downfall. So, by your ignorance of your higher nature, it is as though you have killed or you have negated or you have pushed aside your very identification with your real nature. In the Isavasyam Upanishad, the word Atma Hano, Hano means to kill, Atma, to kill the self, is mentioned in one verse, and the verse reads like this: those worlds of demons, asuras, are covered by blinding darkness. Those people, these people who are covered by this blinding darkness, meaning ignorance of the self, these people, they kill the self, which means they negate their very identification with the self. So what happens to them is, in this verse it says, they go to the world of demons after giving up this body. So from what we call from darkness, from ignorance, we fall into the next birth, we go into the world of demons. And Shankaracharya also explains how does a person destroy himself. Shankaracharya says, because of your own self-ignorance. Your own ignorance of the fact that I am the Atma, you wrongly identify with the body. And this wrong identification leads you to become a karta and a bhokta. So whatever action you perform, you identify with the action, and then you get the results, which can be good or bad. And as a result of that good or bad action, you are continuously caught in this cycle of birth and deaths. So who is responsible? It is you alone, due to your state of ignorance, are the cause of your spiritual downfall and the reason why you have to keep on taking subsequent births. So such people who do not forget the self, what happens to those people who identify with the self, with the Atma? The Lord says, Tatha, therefore, such realized souls, they alone yati, they attain parangatim, the supreme goal. They attain the supreme destination. So very important point is made by Krishna here, that if we want liberation, if we want moksha, we have to go through the path of knowledge, come to identify and accept our real nature, which is Atma, Satchit Ananda, and that is our gateway to attain moksha. So now in the next verse also, verse number 29, Krishna will give the benefit of having this self-knowledge, of identifying with the self. So as long as we identify with the body, we perform actions, we identify with the actions, we receive the fruit of our actions, and we are constantly bound in the cycle of birth and deaths. Until we come to this realization that we are the witness in this body, we are not the doer of any actions. Once we disassociate ourselves from the actions, we observe the status of a witness, then we don't get bound to the fruits of the action. So the Lord says, karmani, all the karmas, all the actions, sarvasaha, in every way, whatever actions, whether they are worldly actions, whether they are spiritual actions, whether they are done with the body, with the speech, or with the mind, then, and one, he says here, sarvasa karmani, all actions, kriyamanani, are done by prakriti, matter. This is, we must add in one more word, prakriti eva, by matter alone. That means this person has come to a realization. Prakriti or matter is this body, is this mind, is this intellect. All that is prakriti. So who is actually doing the actions? It is prakriti which is doing the actions. Eva, the word eva meaning alone, that is prakriti alone does all action, means there is no other cause for action. Nothing else is performing the actions except prakriti. So if you are the Atma, it means you are not performing any actions, number one. Number two, you are also not influencing any actions. Prakriti is performing the actions influenced by the three gunas. So the three gunas in Prakriti will influence the type of actions that the body, the mind, and the intellect perform. So the Lord is saying that one who goes through the path of knowledge will come to understand that it is Prakriti that is functioning. And I am not Prakriti, I am the Atma, the witness, consciousness in this body. So, in chapter 3, verse 27 also, it is mentioned there also the same point, that the person who wrongly identifies with the body says, I am the doer, karta aham iti manyate. So now in this verse number 29, the Lord says, the one who understands all this, yaha pashyati, he sees. Sees means what? Sees with the discriminating intellect. He understands that he is not performing any actions. He identifies himself as the witness. He claims, I am the Purusha, I am the consciousness, I am not Prakriti. So the Lord says here, Tatha, therefore, Saha, he the wise one, Pashyati, he alone is the wise one who sees, who understands the very nature of action and what happens when we identify with action. So, and then he says in this verse, he alone becomes the akartaram. Kartaram means the doer, akartaram means the non-doer. So he is neither the doer, and when he does not identify himself as a doer, the fruits of the results do not accrue to him. So that's when we work towards liberation. So that is another advantage of attaining this knowledge. We understand it is Prakriti that is functioning. We are the witness in this Prakriti, witnessing the body, the mind, the intellect functioning. Now in verse number 30, the Lord gives us the final benefit of acquiring this knowledge. So when we acquire this knowledge, Aham Atma Asmi, we identify with the higher self. So again, to help us understand the state of identification with the higher self, Vedanta gives us the example of a dream state. The dream state is created by ourselves. We alone create our dream state. When we are in the dream state, we forget our state as a waker and we create a false temporary dream world where we play different roles. But in the dream state, for a dreamer, the dream world is not a dream, it is very real. It is only upon awakening that the dreamer realizes that the dream world was false. But as long as you are dreaming, that world appears very real. So Vedanta says you have forgotten your real identity, and due to your ego, you identify yourself as this body mind complex. You get involved in all the transactions and you get affected by the results. But when there is dawning of knowledge through a guru, through reading the scriptures, that is what is called as awakening. Once we are awakened, then we realize that the past we have been living in a dream world. We have been living by wrongly identifying ourselves as this body-mind complex. So the Lord says here in verse number 30, Yada, when a spiritual seeker who is gone through the path of knowledge, Anupashyati. Anupashyati means by deliberating on the teachings of the Upanishads, the teachings of the scriptures. So this word Pashyati we know just now is to see. The word prefix Anu, A-N-U is added. It means deep contemplation on the word of the scriptures, and one gains this knowledge and looks upon himself as the Atma. What happens to such a realized soul? He says this person, bhavam, he perceives the state of existence of all varieties, prathak, everything that is distinct. Whatever this realized soul sees, there are different shapes, different forms, different sizes, different colors. The whole creation comes in multitude of what we call varieties. So prathak here means he sees the existence of the varieties of distinct separateness of bhuta, things in this creation, both moving and non-moving, ekastam, as one. So he does not see diversity. Although there is diversity in creation, but this realized soul does not recognize the diversity. He only sees that one Atma, or the one consciousness residing in everything. A very good example is just like a goldsmith who has deep understanding about gold. When he sees different ornaments, a ring is made of gold, a bracelet is made of gold, a necklace is made of gold, but he sees only the essence or the value of gold in each ornament. He does not see the differences of shapes and sizes of the different ornaments. To him, the most important value is the percentage or the quality of gold in the ornament. The same way, a person who is awoken with this knowledge he sees beyond the diversity in creation. He only recognizes that oneness, that Atma in this whole creation. So, the Lord then says here that tatha then. So Vishtaram, he only sees that the manifestation of the creation that takes place. So he understands this plurality is just a manifestation of the different forms, shapes and sizes. He understands that this diversity is due to the past karmas of each individual Atma. Of each individual self, we see the diversity. But he understands the reason for this diversity, but at the same time he sees the oneness, the Atma in the whole creation. So he has become sampatyate, he has become identified with this one essence in creation. So this is the advantage that the Lord gives when one studies the scriptures and understands and identifies with the higher self. So now that brings us to verse number 31. In verse number 31, here is another advantage of also attaining this knowledge. So what is the advantage? He says, I am Paramatma. I am means this Paramatma, this which is the Supreme Self, which is your own self, Avyaya is immutable. It is not subject to change. So Krishna is reinforcing about the qualities of this Atma. Atma, when the consciousness is in the body, we call it Atma. When the same consciousness is all pervading, it is called Paramatma. But in terms of quality, there is no difference. It is one and the same, the consciousness. So, what is this Paramatma? It is Avyaya, it is immutable, it is not subject to change. And why? And also, it is Anaditvan. Anaditvan means that this Atma does not have a beginning. There is no date of birth for this Atma. The date of birth is for this body, but the Atma is beyond birth. It doesn't have a beginning. It is Anaditva. It does not have a date of birth. And obviously, what does not have a date of birth also does not have a date of death. So, Nirgunatvat, not only does it not have a date of birth and a date of death, it is also Nirgunatvat, means the Atma has no attributes. It is devoid of any gunas. It has no height, weight, shape, color. Every attribute belongs to the body, not to the Atma. And then the Lord says, Api Sarirashto, even though the Atma exists in this Sarirashto, exists in this body, exists in the mind, exists in the intellect, na lipyate, it is not affected. It does not get contaminated. It does not get affected by anything that is changing. So, whether the body is changing, whether the situation or circumstances are changing, this Atma or consciousness in the body does not get affected. It remains the same throughout any changes. And very next important point that the Lord makes here, na karoti, it does not act. It does not perform any actions. The Atma is ever the Sakshi, meaning the silent witness. So these are the very important points that we have to remember, that the Lord is speaking about the very existence of the Atma and why it is very important for us to identify ourselves as the higher self. So now we come to verse number 32. So in verse number 32, he is saying, he's giving us more qualities of this soul. So here Krishna introduces the aspect of space to compare the Atman, the soul, with space. So there are some common features of space and Atma. So sometimes if it's difficult for a student to understand what is Atma because it is what we call not recognized by the senses, then the gurus give the example of space. If you understand space, you understand something about Atma. What are the similarities or common features between space and Atma? Ekatvam, both are only one. There is only one space. So space is only one. There is no different type of spaces. Space is only space. It is of one nature. And the same way, Atman is only one. Space and Atma are sarvagataha. Sarvagataha means they are all pervading. Achalatvam. Achalatvam means space cannot move from one place to another. You cannot take space from the kitchen and move it to space into the dining hall. Space is, you cannot move space. It exists everywhere. Achalatvam. Nirvikaraha. Both space and Atma are not subject to modification. Space does not get older, it does not decay, it does not perish. Same for Atma. Akhandatvam. It is, you cannot divide space. Actually, even we put walls and we call this kitchen space, dining hall space, bedroom space, but actually you cannot divide space. It is all the same. It is of oneness. We only put in walls. In the same way, the Atma, we only put in different shapes and sizes, and then that appears a reality to us, but actually you cannot divide Atma. The Atma in you is the same as the Atma in me. Asangatvam, both are detached, they are not affected. So whatever happens, space never gets polluted, it does not get tainted. The same way Atma also does not get tainted. And finally, the last quality is space supports or accommodates everything. Everything rests in space. In the same way, Atma or the Supreme Consciousness supports this whole creation also. So these are the qualities that we must understand, the similarities. So the Lord says here, Yatha Akasha. Yatha, just as Akasha, space is na upalipyate. It does not get tainted or affected. So where is this space? Sarvagatam. It is all pervading. It is everywhere. But space never gets tainted or it gets affected. So for example, if you throw some rubbish at that particular space, the foul smell is coming from the rubbish. It does not taint the space. If you move the rubbish away, space, what we call, retains its same state. It does not get tainted by the smell of rubbish. So he says, just as space does not get affected, although it is all-pervading, Songshmatvyat, because of its subtle nature. That is why space does not get affected. It is not gross, it is very, very subtle. So when we say subtle means it is not available for our senses to perceive. So the Lord says, Tatha, in the same way, Atma, the consciousness, Avashtitaha, also exists sarvatra, everywhere. Atma also exists everywhere. Dehe, in the body. So this Atma which is existing in everything in creation, na upalipyate, it also does not get tainted by the changes that the body goes through. The body is young, becomes old, decays, the Atma remains the same. The mind goes through different interactions with the world, joy, sorrow, but the Atma remains the same. Now the question will arise, here, if Atma and space are one and the same, why can't you just say space is Atma? We said that space and Atma have got the same qualities. So why not just say that space is Atma? Because there is one difference. Space is matter. Matter is inert. It has got no life. So Atma, whereas, has got consciousness. It is full of life. So therefore, although there are similarities, many similarities between space and Atma, we can never say that space is Atma because space is inert, it has got no life. Atma has got life, it is full of consciousness. And that brings us to verse number 33, where now Krishna gives another example for us to understand Atma by giving us the example of light. So here again, like space and Atma share so many similarities, Sun and Atma also share so many similarities. Sun is Ekam, there is only one sun. Okay, sunlight does not get tainted. If sunlight shines on pure water or dirty water, sunlight does not get polluted. And sunlight illumines every object in the creation, but it itself does not move. Everything in creation moves. Sunlight illumines that, but it does not move. Okay, and sunlight is indivisible. You cannot cut sunlight into pieces. So all the same qualities exist for sunlight and for Atma. So here the Lord says, Yatha, just as Eka, one Ravi, Ravi here is the sun. So just as one sun, S-U-N, Prakashayati, illumines Imam Krishnam, this entire lokam, that one sun alone illumines the entire world, the entire creation. Tatha, in the same way, Kshetri. Kshetri here refers to CH13, the consciousness, the knower of the field. Remember the title of this chapter? CH13 refers to the CH13 or the knower of the field, or that one consciousness. Prakashayati illumines Krishnam, the whole Kshetram, the field, meaning the entire creation. So Kshetrajnam is the consciousness, Kshetram is the field, meaning all the various bodies, the various creations, animals, insects, etc. This one, just like the sun, one sun illumines the whole world. This one Atma, this one consciousness gives life, or gives what you call life to everything in creation. So everything that exists in creation is because of the existence of Atma. And now Krishna concludes in the final verse 34 of chapter 13. He concludes by the teachings of Kshetra and Kshetrajna by stating the final benefit of having this knowledge. So Krishna says the wise person is the one who knows the difference between matter and consciousness, and who claims I am the consciousness principle and not matter. And therefore, whatever I am experiencing is matter. The world is matter, the body is matter, thoughts are matter. Everything being experienced falls under matter alone. So the Lord says, yea, those who, meaning the wise ones, vidur, they know. What do they know? Antaram, the distinction between what? Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the field and the knower of the field, matter and consciousness, Prakriti and Purusha, they all mean one and the same. How does such a person gain this knowledge? He uses the terminology Jnana Chakshu. Chakshu means eye, Jnana means wisdom. So eye of wisdom is symbolically located between the two eyebrows. So where we normally put the tilak or we put the vibhuti, which is the eye of wisdom, or commonly known as the third eye. Because with these two physical eyes, we can only perceive what is manifest. But with the third eye, meaning inner wisdom, we can understand the unmanifest. So, example, with my physical eye, I can observe the moving fan. But it is only because of my understanding, my intellect, that I'm able to understand or discern that the fan is moving because of the unseen electricity. So there are all the differences, of course, between matter and consciousness, which we have gone through in this chapter. So the Lord says the wise one understands that Bhuta Prakriti, meaning the whole creation, Bhuta are the five elements, Prakriti means the creation. One who understands the difference between matter and consciousness, he says, moksha, attains that, what we call that, total liberation. So he says, te param yanti, they yanti, they reach param, the supreme, they will attain moksha. So they alone who understand, those alone who understand by going through the study of the scriptures and claiming their identity as the consciousness, they alone will attain liberation. And thus the very important benefit of going through Jnana Yoga, the study of the scriptures under the guidance of a guru, is that ultimately we will attain liberation. With that, we conclude the discussion on chapter 13. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Hari Om.